Welcome to our deep dive. You ready to get into green computing?
Absolutely.
So we're diving into the Wikipedia article all about this,
Yeah.
and we're going to try to pull out the most interesting parts. I think it's super relevant these days, right?
Yeah, it's everywhere. It really is.
Yeah.
From our phones to these massive data centers, it's a huge topic.
So we're going to figure out how all of that plays into making computing environmentally sustainable.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully you'll learn a thing or two along the way.
I think so. There's some really interesting facts in here.
There are. Did you know that there's a list that ranks supercomputers by how energy efficient they are?
I did not know that, no.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
interesting. So it's not just about raw power anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool.
And also, get this, one of the biggest ways that you can contribute to green computing is by keeping your computer for longer.
That's right. Extending the life of your devices is huge.
Who would have thought?
Makes a big difference.
Okay, so let's get into it. What exactly is green computing?
So at its core,
Yeah.
it's all about making computing environmentally sustainable. And that goes from how we design and manufacture the devices
Okay.
to how we use them and ultimately how we dispose of them.
So it's not just like making eco-friendly gadgets or whatever.
No, it's much broader than that.
Okay.
It's really about minimizing the whole environmental impact of our digital lives,
Gotcha. So it's the whole shebang.
the whole shebang. Exactly.
Okay, so it's not just about like making the devices themselves better, but also like how we use technology to help the environment, I guess.
You've got to has several goals: making devices energy efficient, using renewable energy to power them, designing them so they can be reused or recycled, and then making sure those IT practices like mesh with broader environmental goals.
It's pretty holistic.
It is a very holistic approach.
Okay, cool. Well, you mentioned data centers earlier, and I know those things take a ton of energy. So how does green computing try to deal with that?
Yeah, they're a huge E-focus. Data centers power like everything from our streaming services to,
Yeah.
all this research going on.
Yeah.
The U.S. Department of Energy thinks that data centers use like 100 to 200 times more energy than normal office buildings.
Wow, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And it's only going to grow as we rely more and more on the cloud.
Yeah.
So the pressure's on to make them sustainable.
Yeah, for sure. So how long has this whole green computing thing been around?
Longer than you might think.
Okay.
In the early days, it was mostly about energy efficiency in individual devices.
Okay.
Like, you remember Energy Star?
Oh, yeah, of course, like on appliances and stuff.
Exactly. Well, it actually started back in 1992, and the first products to get the label were computer monitors.
Oh, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I thought it was way more recent.
Nope, 1992.
Wow, so what came after that?
Around the same time, there was this Swedish organization called TCO Development, and they started their TCO certified program. Initially, it was all about reducing emissions from those big old CRT monitors.
Oh, yeah.
But then they expanded it to include energy use, ergonomics, even whether hazardous materials were used in manufacturing.
So they were already thinking about the whole life cycle of the product.
Yeah, way back then.
Wow, impressive.
It is. But, it must have been tough to measure the actual impact of all these efforts.
Yeah, I bet. How do you even go about doing that?
Right. Well, in 2009, the OECD, that's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development,
Okay.
they looked at over 90 government and industry initiatives, all related to green ICT and the environment.
Interesting. And what did they find out? Were these initiatives actually working?
Well, they found a couple of interesting things.
Oops,
First,
yeah.
most of them were focused on making the technology greener,
Okay.
but not necessarily using it to achieve broader environmental goals.
So like building a hybrid car, but not encouraging people to drive it.
Exactly. Perfect analogy.
Okay.
I get this. Only about 20% of those initiatives actually had measurable targets.
Oh, wow.
It's hard to track progress if you don't have clear goals.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So even with the best intentions, there wasn't always a clear path to success.
Yeah, so it sounds like there were some growing pains, but governments were starting to push for better standards, right?
Yeah, definitely. In the U.S., they updated the Energy Star program in 2006,
Okay.
made it stricter for computers, and by 2008, 26 states had e-waste recycling programs.
So things were moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it was a mix of progress and challenges.
For sure. And were companies doing their part too? I'm
Hmm.
curious about what was happening in the industry.
Oh, yeah, there were a lot of industry-led initiatives popping up.
Like what?
Well, for example, there was the Climate Savers Computing Initiative.
Okay.
They focused on reducing power consumption in PCs. both when they were being used and when they were idle.
Oh, to combat that vampire power dream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget about all those devices that are constantly drawing power, even when we're not using them.
Yeah, totally. So what else was going on?
The Green Electronics Council created the Electronic Product Environmental Assessment Tool,
Okay.
or EPEAT.
EPEAT. What's that?
It's a really cool tool to help you make greener choices when you're buying electronics. It rates computers and other electronics based on all sorts of criteria like energy efficiency, sustainability.
So it's like a nutrition label for your tech.
Exactly.
Okay.
Lets you make a more informed choice.
Yeah. So we've got government initiatives, these industry groups, tools like EPEAT. What about supercomputers? Are those part of this whole movement?
Absolutely. You know how some people obsess over that TITO P500 list?
Yeah.
You know, the one that ranks supercomputers by their processing power?
Yeah, not really my thing, but I know what you mean.
Well, there's also a Green 500 list.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it ranks supercomputers based on energy efficiency.
Wow, that's really cool.
It is. It's not just about raw power anymore. It's about how efficiently those machines use energy.
I love that.
It's a good sign.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's another group worth mentioning, the Green Grid. They're a global consortium that focuses on energy efficiency in data centers and business computing.
Okay.
They've done a lot to develop standards and best practices for more sustainable data centers.
So it's really a collaborative effort, all these different groups working towards the same goal.
It really is.
That's really cool, but I'm wondering, what does this all mean for the average person? What can WE do to be part of green computing?
That's a great question, and that's what we'll dive into next. There are actually a lot of simple but effective things you can do in your everyday life to make a difference.
Well, I'm ready to hear them.
All right, let's get into it. One of the biggest things you can do is just hang on to your devices for longer.
Really?
Yeah, manufacturing a new PC makes up like 70% of its environmental impact, according to Gartner.
Wow. So just keeping our phones and laptops for as long as we can is a good thing for the planet.
It really is. Upgrading an existing PC has a much smaller footprint than buying a brand new one.
Okay, so when I need to upgrade, is there anything I should be thinking about?
Definitely look for those Energy Star labels. Use that EPEAT tool we talked about to find the good stuff. And don't forget about the power management settings.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, those can make a big difference.
I'm so bad about leaving my computer on all the time. Is that really that bad?
Well, think of it this way. That ACPI thing, that power management standard,
Right.
it lets your computer sleep when you're not using it.
Okay.
Like giving it a rest saves energy.
I like that. Sleep is good for everyone.
Exactly.
Computers, too. So we've talked about hardware. What about software? Does that really have an impact on energy consumption?
It might seem kind of weird, but yeah, it does.
And how so?
Imagine finding a shortcut.
Okay.
A more efficient algorithm is like taking that shortcut, gets you where you need to go, but uses less energy along the way.
Ah, so it's about making things run more efficiently behind the scenes.
Exactly. And there are a lot of ways to do that. You remember that thing about Google searches using a ton of energy?
Yeah, vaguely. Was that true?
Well, Google said that wasn't really accurate, but brings up a good point.
Okay.
Even simple stuff online can have an environmental impact.
Whoa.
Yeah, makes you think.
It really does. So what else can we do on the software side?
Well, there's virtualization. Think of it like running a bunch of apps on your phone without needing a separate device for each one.
Okay.
It's becoming super common in data centers. They can consolidate their servers, use resources way more efficiently.
So it's like digital decluttering, getting rid of the stuff you don't really need.
Pretty much.
Nice. So are there any other cool ways software can help save energy?
You bet. Choosing energy-efficient software is a good start. Some programs are designed to be lighter and use less resources.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's worth looking into. You might find some greener alternatives to what you're using now.
Cool. I'll have to do some digging.
Definitely. So we talk about data centers a little bit, but how can they actually become more sustainable? What are some of the strategies?
Yeah, I'd love to know more about that.
Well, it's a complex challenge. It takes a holistic approach. The U.S. Department of Energy has identified 5 key areas to focus on: IT systems, the environment itself, air management, cooling systems, and electrical systems.
So it's not just about the computers, but the whole building and everything.
Right, optimizing everything for efficiency.
Gotcha. Give me an example.
Sure, if you choose a location with a cooler climate, you don't need to use as much air conditioning.
Makes sense. Work with nature.
Exactly.
So what about the IT systems themselves? What can we do there?
Well, virtualization is key, and we can always try to reduce the number of servers that aren't being used much.
Right. Those idle servers are just wasting energy.
Yeah, like energy vampires.
Exact.
And of course, you got to choose energy efficient hardware,
Across the board.
everything from servers to storage, networking equipment, even the power supplies.
So many moving
It's
parts.
a lot.
What about data center cooling? Are there any interesting innovations happening there? That seems like a major energy drain.
Definitely, some companies are getting really creative. They're experimenting with using the waste heat from the servers to heat buildings nearby.
Really?
Yeah, or even generate electricity.
Wow, turning a problem into a solution.
Exactly. Very clever.
What about water usage? I know data centers use a ton of water for cooling.
Yeah, traditional methods are pretty water intensive, so there's a big push for more sustainable cooling
Yeah,
technologies.
like what?
Some companies are even trying out immersive cooling.
What's that?
It's where they submerge the servers in these special fluids that don't conduct electricity.
Wow, that sounds like science fiction.
It does, but it's actually happening.
That's so cool.
These fluids are way more efficient at transferring heat than air,
Okay.
so you can save a lot of energy and water.
Wow, so the future of data centers is going to be pretty wild.
It really is. We're talking more efficient, less wasteful, maybe even beneficial to the communities around them.
That's awesome.
It is. It's all about figuring out how to make our digital world sustainable.
For sure. Well, speaking of innovation, there's one more thing I want to touch on, the cloud.
Oh yeah, the cloud is a big one when it comes to green computing.
Yeah, I use it all the time, but I don't really know how it works, let alone how it impacts the environment.
Yeah, it's a whole other world when you start thinking about it.
So is it good or bad for the environment?
It's kind of complicated.
Okay.
On one hand, it has the potential to be super energy efficient, like those massive data centers that Amazon and Google and Microsoft use.
Okay.
Those hyperscale data centers, they can actually leverage economies of scale to be more efficient.
So instead of a bunch of companies having their own little data centers,
Yeah,
they can all just use the cloud and be way more efficient.
exactly. And they use things like virtualization, which we talked about,
Yeah.
and dynamic provisioning, which lets them adjust their computing resources based on demand.
So it's like they're only using what they need when they need it.
Right. Some studies show that companies can actually reduce their energy use and emissions significantly by moving stuff to the cloud.
Okay, that makes sense, but there's got to be a downside, right?
There is.
I knew it.
The big issue is transparency.
Okay.
Critics say that these cloud providers need to do a better job of tracking and reporting their emissions.
So we know what's really going on.
Exactly. It's great if it's efficient, but we need to be able to measure it.
So it needs to be accountable.
Exactly. Accountable and transparent.
Gotcha. So it's not just about making the cloud efficient, but also being open about how it's impacting the environment.
Right. And there's a movement now called GreenOps or DevSysOps.
SysOps. What's that?
It's basically about building sustainability into cloud management for the beginning.
Okay, I like that. But what does it actually look like in practice?
Well, it's about thinking about sustainability at every stage. For example, there's something called carbon-aware computing,
Okay.
which uses data about how much carbon different energy grids produce.
So they know which grids are cleaner.
Exactly. And then they can run their workloads on those grids.
So you're strategically choosing the cleanest energy sources.
Yeah, you could even shift workloads at different times of day, like when solar or wind power is more available.
That's amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a way to align computing power with renewable energy.
So smart. I love it.
And then there's demand shaping, which is adjusting workloads based on when clean energy is available.
So you're further reducing your reliance on fossil fuels.
Right.
It's like the cloud is becoming self-aware and making good choices for the planet.
That's a great way to put it. And we're also seeing technologies like grid-aware computing.
What's that?
It allows cloud platforms to automatically adjust their energy use based on real-time data from the electricity grid.
Wow. So the cloud can actually help balance the grid?
Potentially, yeah. It could make renewable energy way more viable.
That's incredible, like turning the cloud into a giant battery for clean energy.
Exactly. It's really exciting. And it shows how green computing can go beyond just minimizing harm.
Yeah.
It can actually contribute to a more sustainable future.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much from the basics to all these crazy innovations.
Me too.
It's clear that green computing is not just a fad.
Definitely not.
It's a whole new way of thinking about technology.
It is. It's been great talking about all this.
Yeah, it has.
And I think the biggest takeaway is that green computing is a journey, not a destination.
I like that.
It's an ongoing process, and we all have a part to play.
Well said. So as we become more and more reliant on technology, we need to keep asking ourselves how we can make it more sustainable.
Absolutely.
Who knows what the future holds, but it's going to be interesting.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.